on lifting the continuing de facto moratorium on U.S. energy production, on U.S. jobs, on good additional federal revenue to the U.S. Treasury to lower our deficit if we're going to get on the right energy path. Thank you, Mr. President, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll of the Senate.
Mr. Akaka.
While we wait for a senator to speak, we're going to go now to the Foreign Affairs Committee talking about the Middle East.
But there are more challenging scenarios where calls for democratic reform are held back or met with violence. And there is the risk of backsliding or the derailment of progress. And, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned Palestinian reconciliation. Let me be very clear. We certainly understand the concerns you raise. There has been a deal signed, but there are many steps left to implement that agreement, and we're monitoring it closely. But from our perspective, it is absolutely clear that in order to play any constructive role in achieving peace, any Palestinian government must accept the Quartet principles. They must reject violence, accept Israel's right to exist, and agree to abide by previous agreements. We will continue to stand up firmly for our principles and our interests in this region. As citizens and leaders in the Middle East move toward democratic change, we will support their efforts. We believe in their potential, and we look forward to a day when all the citizens of the region are able to have their voices heard, their rights respected, and their aspirations met. We believe that that will be a brighter future and a more stable future, one that works for them and for us. We look forward to continuing to work with this committee and with the Congress to make that future a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my understanding that the gentlelady from New York has a Codell to catch, and so I'm going to defer my questions so she can get them in before she has to leave. So the gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this very relevant hearing today, and thank you to our guests. My question, and I will get right to the point, is with regards to the Muslim Brotherhood. And I'd like you to please explain to me what you see their role is in the Middle East. We are hearing concerns from Egypt, from Israel, from Jordan as to their gaining power. And I'd like to hear what the administration, what your thoughts are about the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important issue to raise, and it's one that we're following closely. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt abandoned violence in the 1970s. Since then, they've played a role in politics, but their views have not always been clear. And what we are looking to see emerge in Egypt is a diverse political marketplace where people face a real choice and where organizations like the Brotherhood and other political parties are challenged to make their views clear, including on core democratic principles, rejection of violence, the embrace of democratic values and rules, both before and after the election, and a commitment to equality for all under the law, including women and minorities. Those are the requisites to play a constructive role in the democratic process.
As a follow-up to that, does the administration, are they opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood, their power and them expanding their power in Jordan?
Well, in Jordan, the Muslim Brotherhood is not itself politically competitive. There is a political party, the Islamic Action Front, which has some links to the Brotherhood, which is a recognized political party and competes in Jordanian elections. They've been a part of the political scene there for some time.
And I think as a follow-up, we have heard from many of their concerns regarding the Muslim Brotherhood. And I'd like to know if the administration sees them as a moderate group or as a group that's really a threat, as what we've heard from testimony we've heard from folks from Israel and the like.
I think from our perspective, what's important is that we see a diversity of views and voices, and that we see all of those who want to participate in the democratic process embracing democratic principles. It is a concern for the process and a concern for the integrity of the democratic process. It's not for us to choose the winners of those political competitions. That obviously is for the people in the region to make that choice. But we want to see them make that choice within a free and fair and competitive context.
So as a follow-up to that, do you see the Muslim Brotherhood as an organization that would allow that process to play out, or what might be a threat to the freedom, to the very thing that these people are fighting for? And, well, I'll let you comment on that and I'll follow up.
Thank you. I think as the situation in Egypt continues to evolve and as the Egyptian people start to prepare for their elections, there are already a number of new political parties forming and organizing. There are a lot of debates swirling around the role of religion in politics, and I think that we're already seeing the Egyptian people engage robustly in this discussion. So that process is going to continue to play itself out, and of course we'll be watching it closely. But ultimately it is up to the Egyptian people to determine their future.
Thank you very much. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady, Ms. Schwartz, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for question. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more, just following up a bit on the previous questions about the situation in Egypt. And I guess I would say a couple questions, if I may. One is to follow up on how prepared they are for elections in September. There's some sense that some of the points you're making in terms of new and emerging parties, how quickly can they be organized, how substantial can they be, how competitive they can be. Of course, I agree with you that this is up to the people of Egypt to make these decisions for their future, but as we encourage democratic reforms, we don't want them to be unprepared for those reforms. We know that that is does not necessarily bode well for good decision-making for them, and so I don't want us to push too hard to lead that direction. And secondly, the word as to, we originally had heard that Egypt was going to abide by previous treaties. Have you heard otherwise? There's obviously deep concern in Israel about the border with Gaza, whether in fact that will be open, whether that would then lead to weapons, munitions, other supplies coming into Gaza that would potentially enhance the opportunity for violence and destruction. So let me start there, and then if there's opportunity for follow-up, I would be pleased to be able to.
Thank you. Let me answer the first set of questions first. I think what we've seen over at least 30 years in Egypt is a ossification of all institutions, including political institutions. And so as transition now is underway, one of the challenges Egyptians face, particularly young people and others who took to the streets, is that they don't have experience with political parties. They haven't had the ability to do political polling or to organize to do electioneering. And so we are very much involved. Congress has, and we've made available part of the bilateral funds to Egypt to go to groups like NDI and IRI to begin that building process, building the foundation for sustainable democracy in Egypt. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's critically important. There are an important segment of Egyptian society, secular, reform-minded, democratic, concerned about the future of their own country, and they want and are eager to build the skills to play a vital role in a political process that will lead to a democratic Egypt.
Do you think that can happen in 6 months?
Well, I think it's going to be a real challenge. I think we're in a transitional phase. I think it's realistically to have elections in 6 months, both for Parliament and the President, strains a system that's in a very embryonic state. And so I think we need to be quick and resolute in trying to help right now,
Right.
but we also need to be mindful that over time we've got to stay the course, and this is going to happen over a period of years. I'm optimistic in the long term we can get there, but I think we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that it's going to look like the United States or Western Europe in a matter of months. And so I think we're committed to helping those Egyptians that share our democratic aspirations. And we know that it's going to be a process for them to learn, to build their capacity, to build their constituencies, and over time to have the role they deserve in Egypt.
Just related to those parties, you have some sense, and this is some of the questions of how much Iran is trying to play into influencing parties that could evolve that would be more sympathetic to their position and anti-West and anti-democratic ultimately.
We are always mindful and wary of the intentions of the Iranian government. Which
as we should be.
and, you know, that is certainly an aspect. It's a feature in many of these countries. I think our primary focus, though, right now is and needs to be in building that capacity, that democratic capacity that Egyptians themselves want. They want the same kinds of opportunities people have in this country, economic and political opportunities. We can help reinforce their own aspirations and desires.
All right. I think just have a minute left, but maybe we can answer the question about the treaties and the ability of the treaty with Israel and the border on Gaza.
Absolutely. Thank you. This obviously is an issue of core concern for us as well as for our Israeli allies. The interim government announced almost immediately that they would continue to respect their international commitments. That was an announcement that we welcome and we expect them to hold to, and I think that that's going to be an important element for us to see in any future Egyptian government as well. During this interim period, we've seen the government of Egypt continue to uphold those commitments, engage with Israel on important issues, including security, and also continue to work to stop arms smuggling through Egyptian territory.
All right, thank you. I think my time is up. I yield back. Thank you.
Okay, the gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Manzullo, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. The President and the rest of the people in the State Department in various positions wasted no time in condemning Mubarak, asking him to step down. The same with Gaddafi. Made statements hinting at the peaceful removal of the leader of Yemen. And yet the Arab country that suffered perhaps the most casualties, at least recorded, is Syria. And aside from condemning the violence, which is easy because no one likes violence, the President has made no overtures to ask Bashar to step down. Only a couple of days ago, the Obama administration issued an executive order freezing the assets of 3 top Syrian officials, most notably Bashar al-Assad, who is President Assad's brother. And I realize in this crazy world you have to pick and choose your friends, but I'm just a little bit miffed as to why the United States is apparently not taking harsher action or asking Bashar to leave office. Either of you two have any comments on that?
Congressman, you know, one of the things that the President said, I want to quote his words. He said, this outrageous use of violence to quell protests must come to an end now. We strongly oppose the Syrian government's treatment of its citizens. We continue to oppose its continued destabilizing behavior more generally, including support for terrorism and terrorist groups. Those are statements that aren't made lightly or easily.
Well, I understand that, but he didn't ask him to step down.
Well, what we have done, as you indicated, is to impose now unilateral sanctions. We've also led an effort at the United Nations to have Syria condemned by the international community
But that was
for the
failed.
first time.
That
And that
failed.
happened in the last 2 weeks.
No, I understand that, but why doesn't the administration ask him to step down?
I think we're at a point now where we are constantly reevaluating the policy. As the violence escalates, we're going to explore options, and we're going to also take our lead from what's happening in the country and what people there are saying and doing. We have made it very clear that we are utterly condemnatory
No,
of the violence.
I understand that. I read the words and I quoted them myself. I just think it's inconsistent. I mean, Mubarak left, and who was left but the Muslim Brotherhood? You have to sometimes wonder what you ask for, and the Middle East is ablaze right now. But I don't see that much pressure on Syria.
Live
I don't see the
online
president
at
asking for
We're
his
going to break
removal,
away now,
asking him
take
to
you
step
back to the
down,
Senate
when he
floor
was
as the quorum call
not
is ending.
reticent to do that with regard to the other leaders.
About the alarming situation in Syria, where the regime of Bashar al-Assad is pursuing a barbaric campaign of indiscriminate repression against the Syrian people. Over the past 2 weeks, the crackdown pursued by Assad has markedly escalated. There can no longer be any doubt about his intentions. As a report by the respected non-governmental organization, the International Crisis Group, warned this week, and I quote, "The regime's hope appears to be that a massive crackdown can bring the protesters to heel." And I continue to quote, "Such a course of action would entail loss of life on a massive scale, and it could usher in a period of sectarian fighting with devastating consequences for Syria. It could destabilize its neighbors, and ultimately, it is highly unlikely to work." End of quote. Madam President, in the city of Daraa, the Assad regime has deployed tanks against the civilian population. It has cut off phone lines, water, food, and electricity, and deployed snipers, according to human rights groups, who have been firing at anyone who ventures outdoors. And that includes young people who are sent outdoors by their families to try to buy some food. In short, what we see in Daraa is a broad-based, indiscriminate assault by Assad's military forces against the people of his own country. The evidence is growing that international crimes are being perpetrated by Bashar al-Assad himself in the city of Daraa in Syria. The attack on Daraa is just one part, of course, of a broader crackdown by Syrian security forces across the country, a crackdown that has left several hundred people dead. Tanks and military forces have been reported being deployed in other cities in Syria. According to Human Rights Watch, the number of arbitrary detentions of civilians and enforced disappearances around the country has skyrocketed in recent days, as the Assad regime has swept up not only demonstrators, but women, minors, and family members of activists. Another Syrian human rights group has documented more than 500 arrests in Daraa alone since last week, and thousands more nationwide have also been detained or disappeared arbitrarily. As that report by the International Crisis Group that I referenced before that came out earlier this week argued, and again I quote, "The regime is also fanning the flames of sectarianism, spreading rumors of impending acts targeting specific groups. Sectarian tendencies no doubt exist in parts of the country, but the authorities' tactics betray a determined and cynical attempt to exploit and exasperate them." What's most remarkable of all is that in the face of and despite these outrageous, inhumane actions by the Assad regime, the people of Syria refuse to be silenced. They refuse to be intimidated. In the face of tanks and snipers, the people of Syria have continued to cry out and demonstrate for their fundamental human rights, and they have continued to do so peacefully. Moreover, despite the sectarian provocations by President Assad, the message of the protesters has remained steadfastly one of Syrian national unity. Tomorrow, Friday, it is expected that thousands of brave Syrians will once again take to the streets of their cities and towns in protest of the totalitarian dictatorship that currently controls their country. As they do so, I want them to know that the United States and the rest of the civilized world stands unequivocally on the side of the people of Syria, in solidarity with them in their courageous struggle for their human rights. And they should know also that we are increasingly confident that the people of Syria can and will prevail over the Assad regime. There's much we here in the United States can and must do to help the Syrian people in their fight for freedom. Last week, the Obama administration issued an executive order authorizing targeted sanctions against individuals and organizations responsible for the human rights abuses in Syria. The administration used this newest authority to sanction 3 Syrian officials, including Maher al-Assad, the brother of Bashar al-Assad. This was a very important action, and I thank and commend the Obama administration for taking it. There is, however, more that now can and must be done. To begin with, it's clear that there are many more individuals in the Syrian government than the 3 named so far who are responsible for the human rights abuses and worse that are taking place throughout Syria. It's urgent and essential that the Obama administration expand the sanctions to cover these additional Syrian officials. Members of the Syrian security forces and government must understand that they face a choice in the days ahead. If they stick with the Assad regime and participate in the barbaric crackdown against their fellow Syrians, their names are going to be made famous around the world, and they will be held accountable. It's also critical that the United States impose sanctions on Bashar al-Assad himself, for he is the head of the regime that is systematically carrying out large-scale human rights abuses. It is he who is directing his military forces to fire on his own people. Surely it requires a willing suspension of disbelief to think that the order to use military force against the Syrian people did not originate with the president of Syria himself, Bashar al-Assad. He must be held accountable. I respectfully urge President Obama to speak out as soon as possible, directly and personally, about what's happening in Syria. For the moral authority of the President of the United States matters enormously at historic moments like the one in Syria now. Unfortunately, there are still many in Syria and throughout the Middle East who believe that the United States is hedging its bets in Syria. It's time to put those doubts to rest. I've met over the last few weeks, as recently as yesterday, with Syrian dissidents. And I've heard the same question from them again and again. Why has President Obama not spoken out personally about what is happening in Syria, they ask. I say the administration has made statements. They say we need to hear and see the President and hear his voice, President Obama, making clear his disdain and refusal to accept what's happening in Syria today. And so I respectfully urge the President to answer these appeals by Syrian freedom fighters for support of their cause. I hope that the President can make clear once again, as he did so effectively in the cases of Egypt and Libya, that Bashar al-Assad has lost the legitimacy to lead Syria, and it is time for Bashar to go. The United States can also work with our allies and partners to increase international pressure on the Assad regime. Press reports indicate, I'm pleased to note, that the European Union is preparing to put in place an arms embargo against Syria, and that it is also considering targeted human rights sanctions against top Syrian officials. I fervently hope that our European friends and allies take these and further steps to increase the pressure on the Assad regime. I am especially encouraged that the French foreign minister this week correctly called for Bashar al-Assad to be sanctioned directly himself, to tie up his to our EU partners. Madam President, I want to say that I believe Turkey can also play a unique leadership role in the days and weeks ahead to support a successful democratic transition in Syria. No one has worked harder than Prime Minister Erdogan to encourage Bashar al-Assad to reform, to accept the legitimate demands of the Syrian people and embrace democracy. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, Assad has ignored the wise counsel of the Turkish leader and refused to respond with action. I therefore hope that President Obama will find a way to partner directly with Prime Minister Erdogan on developing a new strategy towards Syria, one that recognizes that despite our hopes and efforts, there will be no real progress as long as Bashar al-Assad remains in power in Damascus. A policy that aligns our two democracies, America and Turkey, unequivocally with the democratic aspirations of the Syrian people. We should also work, Madam President, with our allies on the UN Human Rights Council to ensure that the investigative mission to Syria, which was agreed upon by the Council last week, is undertaken immediately. Every day matters. And we should work to refer Assad's regime to the International Criminal Court, again, as we did in the case of Libya. And what the Assad regime is doing to the people of Syria looks every day more the mirror image of what the Gaddafi regime has done to the people of Libya. For its actions in the city of Daraa and throughout the country, the Assad regime deserves to be investigated by the International Criminal Court. I respectfully urge our own administration to use the diplomatic clout that we have at the United Nations to put what's happening in Syria on the agenda of the UN Security Council. I have no illusions about the challenges and obstacles that exist at the Security Council at this time to taking action with regard to what's happening in Syria. But we must try. If the Security Council fails to take up what is happening in Syria, perhaps because of the opposition of the Russians and the Chinese, it does so at the expense of its own international credibility and legitimacy. And finally, Madam President, I hope that President Obama will work together with our international allies to provide the Syrian people with the humanitarian assistance that they urgently need, food, water, and medical supplies, and to restore communications linkages that the Assad regime has cut among the freedom fighters in various communities in Syria. Assad has cut them in an offer to prevent news and information about what's happening in Syria also from reaching the outside world. Madam President, the situation in Syria is fast approaching the point of no return. The fact is that several hundred Syrians have been killed by Assad's security forces. This is a regime that I conclude is beyond self-correction. Bashar al-Assad is not a reformer. He is a corrupt dictator and an inhumane thug. and his regime has long been one of the worst in the Middle East. It is time for him to go. So let me conclude by adding that nearly a decade after the attacks of September 11th, Americans and people throughout the world awoke Monday morning to a safer, better world with Osama bin Laden gone. It is fitting, Madam President, that Osama bin Laden has been killed just as Arab democracies across the Middle East and North Africa are being born, are coming to life. The peaceful, youth-driven democratic revolutions now taking place in Syria, Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya are the true repudiation of the extreme ideology that I will call bin Ladenism. To rid our world not only of bin Laden, but of bin Ladenism, it is critical that we now do everything in our power to help the democratic forces in Syria and across the Middle East succeed. For it will ultimately be, quite correctly and powerfully, at the hands of his fellow Arabs and Muslims that the hateful and violent ideology of bin Laden and its manifestations of a different sort in dictatorships across the Middle East are finally discredited and abandoned in the ash heap of history where they belong. I thank the Chair. I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll. Mr. Akaka. And while we wait for a senator to speak on the Senate floor, going back now to the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the Middle East and South Asia on political transitions in the Middle East.
Ambassador Ford, you said, can reach out to those who are on the receiving end of the violence, and that he has the opportunity to try to mitigate this violence. Can you just describe how that works when having these meetings and learning of and meeting directly with the families and hearing directly of the ramifications of these actions taken by the Syrian government and this regime? How does he then communicate with the regime? What does he communicate with the regime? And ultimately, what message are we sending?
We received a report from one of the human rights organizations yesterday or today that perhaps as many as 1,000 people have been arrested since Monday in a half a dozen cities in Syria. We gather that information. The ambassador takes that information. He meets with these organizations, but also family members of the people who have been detained. He and others in the embassy then approach the government. It is a constant process of both trying to figure out where people are, how families can get access, how they can get a lawyer, and how they can get released. Now, do we succeed in every case in resolving the differences? No, we don't. But it is enormously helpful to the people that are feeling under horrible strain because they don't know where their loved ones are, that an ambassador from the United States is there mindful of their story, ready to meet with them, ready to go in and talk to senior officials and say, we are concerned about this. We do this all over the world. It's not unique to Syria. I was in China last week. We have an embassy there very dedicated, doing exactly the same thing. We do it in lots of countries around the world. It's very important to people that are feeling they have no authority, no power, no ability to challenge or ask questions of their own government, that they're influential diplomats, especially from the United States, ready to play their role.
And just changing direction for a second, in your testimony you talked about the human rights abuses occurring at the hands of the Iranian regime. And I would suggest that the wave of democracy sweeping the Middle East really began after the 2009 disputed elections in Iran. Yet, in more recent times, the opposition movement within Iran has not galvanized the same momentum as in other countries throughout the region. Can you discuss the state of the democracy movement in Iran and what this country is doing and what we ought to be doing to empower the opposition?
I think your analysis is correct. Since May of 2009, the government of Iran brutally has cracked down against the opposition. And it's been, I think the hypocrisy of the Iranian government has become all the more clear in the last few months as they're cheering on people in other societies who are challenging authority while basically brutally cracking down on their own dissenting voices. We do things both directly and indirectly to try to lend support and solidarity to people in the opposition and people in the human rights movement, democracy movement in Iran. We led an effort at the UN in March to have for the first time a special rapporteur, a special expert on Iran. The government fought us like crazy on that. We were really in the lead, and we got the UN to do that. We work with Iranian dissidents, both inside and outside the country. Hugely dangerous for some of them. We don't broadcast those, all of those associations, but we're trying to figure out, for example, how they can get better access to information through the Internet. Congress passed the Voice Act, which gives us some resources to begin to open up access to information and allow Iranian dissidents to speak among themselves. There is still a vital movement in Iran, many of them young people, who are desperate and frustrated beyond belief at what they see as a totally autocratic, despotic government. They'll continue to push, and we'll continue to help them.
And to that end, Mr. Posner, we just yesterday introduced bipartisan legislation to impose sanctions on those who aid in the abuses of the opposition movement and further human rights abuses within Iran. I would invite you to take a look. I think it is consistent with the efforts that you've just described, and ultimately we would be looking to you for some additional guidance as well. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back, and we're going to go into a second round, so the gentleman will give another bite at the apple if you'd like. But so I recognize myself for another 5 minutes, and I'm going to give a couple of quick questions first. First of all, after the Assad regime has killed hundreds of Syrians, does the administration believe that the Assad regime holds any legitimacy, yes or no? Or a sentence, if you need a sentence, after the yes or no.
Mr. Chairman, I think the Syrian people are looking at the actions of this regime and drawing their own conclusions, and I think you see the effect of that in the street.
I didn't hear a yes or no. And I'm talking about the administration, not what they think. Does the administration believe that the Assad regime holds any legitimacy?
Mr. Chairman, I think it is the Syrian people's judgment here that is important, and I think they will draw their conclusions based on his behavior.
So the administration isn't taking a position at this point, at least from what you're saying?
We're being guided, as Assistant Secretary Posner said earlier, we're being guided by the events we see on the ground, and we're reevaluating on a daily basis.
Okay, next question. Does the administration still believe that Abu Mazen is committed to peace, given the fact that he just publicly embraced the leader of Hamas and said Hamas did not have to recognize Israel's right to exist?
Mr. Chairman, I think Abu Mazen, President Abbas, has, over the course of his career, exercised a lot of leadership on this issue as somebody who is committed to a negotiated solution with Israel. This reconciliation agreement is something that I think has yet to play out. We are going to be looking at it very closely, and as I said, we're going to be looking for some very specific things before we can make any assessment as to what the impact will be on our policy. But I think President Abbas's personal commitments and the commitments that he's made in office have been supportive of the process.
Let me go down a different road here. I had a former Arab head of state in my office just yesterday, and we talked for a good hour about a whole range of issues. And he was in the Middle East, although it was in my office. And he kept coming back. He must have 6 different times come back to the, well, if we can just solve the Israeli Palestinian problem, everything else falls into line. And he said it over and over again, and I disputed that, and I think that's been used as an excuse for the corrupt governments that many of the Arab governments have had in the Middle East for years. But I'd like to see what the administration believes about that.
You know, we have, I agree with what you say. There have been a number of actions at the UN and elsewhere where the Israeli-Palestinian dispute has become the centerpiece and in some ways to the exclusion of so many other problems in the region. And what's interesting about events of the last several months is that people who took to Tahrir Square in Egypt or to the streets in Tunisia and all these other countries are so focused on their own future. It's striking how much the focus is on how to democratize, how to open up, how to create greater opportunities in Syria, in Egypt, in all of these other countries. So I think we're seeing a change in the region. It's a welcome change. There's now on the merits a discussion about what governance and what democracy and what the future holds throughout the Middle East, and I think we ought to be supportive of that.
Okay. Let me conclude. I've only got a short period of time left here on a couple of just points to wrap this up. On both sides, I think it's pretty clear that there is considerable concern with the administration's lack of greater emphasis on Syria, more action there, more affirmative things done when you have the regime that essentially has killed hundreds of their own people and probably much worse than that over the years. So that's something I would strongly urge the administration to look at very closely. I know that they've spent time on Libya, considerable time and effort there, but I think Syria warrants it. Secondly, relative to this reconciliation, I have great skepticism. The way it was explained to me by the foreign minister of Egypt, who was, you know, very excited about this, much more so than Prime Minister Netanyahu, obviously, was that you have Hamas and you have the Palestinian Authority, and they come together and have elections and form some independent entity of some sort, and then that's the independent entity that Israel is going to negotiate. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's a non-starter because everybody knows that Hamas is right behind this independent entity, and they still haven't met the quartet's requirements principles, as we know. So whereas I always hope that peace will break out there, I don't really believe it's real. And then finally, relative to Egypt, we met with a lot of the young leaders, the people that were on Tahrir Square. We met with the generals. We met with a whole range of people. And one of the things that's of considerable concern to me is, first of all, Egypt's role in this reconciliation and that they bought into it. But even more so, their change in engagement with Iran. They seem to be much more willing to engage Iran. And we all know that Ahmadinejad has essentially said that his intention is to wipe Israel off the map. And we also know that he seems to be bound and determined to move forward on this nuclear program, despite the fact that our allies in the United States have been attempting to do this non-militarily through sanctions for years now. But Iran and Egypt's sidling up to them is of considerable concern, I believe. Could you comment on that element, Egypt and getting closer to Iran, and what the administration's attitude would be towards that and what we ought to do about it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that is a crucial question, and it's one that we are spending a lot of time focusing on ourselves. We remain deeply concerned about Iran's role in the region, its sponsorship of terrorism, its illicit nuclear program, and its failure to comply with its own international obligations in that regard. And what we see is that as these events have taken place across the region, the Iranians have been seeking to exploit them in order to distract from that regional agenda. But they've been doing that in a way that I would say has exposed their tremendous hypocrisy in claiming to support popular movements elsewhere in the region that they think will work to their advantage while engaging in brutal repression at home, and now, as we see, are complicit in Syrian repression as well. From our perspective, the developments in the region and the work that we can do to support democratic transition in this region will work to Iran's disadvantage. This is part of the strategic opportunity that we're presented with here, and it's one that we want to pursue.
All right. Thank you. Just let me conclude with one other thing that just, when I'm mentioning Iran, one of the mistakes I think that the United States made was when there was at least a chance, it looked like the people were rising up, that we didn't give them additional support. And I know that there was the thinking that the United States gets in, they'll use the United States and say, well, these people are all just, it's the U.S., it's the great Satan, it's Israel, and all that kind of stuff. They're going to say that stuff anyway, and they said it then. But I think we should have been much more engaged, probably behind the scenes, but I think we should have given more encouragement to those people. But the information that we gathered is that there's a significant essentially wiping out of all the leaders. They had cameras, and they're killing people on a regular basis over there. And that's something I think we need to do, and I know it's somewhat limited what we can do. But these people are out there, you know, trying to speak out and try to enjoy the same freedoms, maybe not the United States to this level, but at least free from this type of regime that they've been under for decades now. And the people are, one after another, being wiped out. And that's one of the reasons that I think we haven't seen, you know, it's sweeping through. If there's any country in that region you'd like to see this happen, it'd be Iran. I think they were ahead of everybody else, unfortunately. And maybe if it had happened now, maybe it would have been different. But anyway, just for what you don't have to respond, but to the extent that the administration can think about that, I would, as chair of this committee, appreciate it. And without anything else coming before the committee, members will have 5 minutes to supplement their statements or questions. And if there's nothing further to come before the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
This House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee hearing wrapping up for the day. You can see the entire hearing online at cspan.org. Going back now to the Senate live in a quorum call, waiting for senators to speak. Senators today spending much of the day on general speeches.
Madam President.
Senator from Maryland.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, this month people will, all over the country, will grab their tackle boxes and head off in pursuit of the elusive trout in mountain streams. Mothers and fathers will turn on their kitchen faucets and hand their children glasses of clean, pure drinking water that we have in this country. Farmers will irrigate their spring plantings and vegetables and grains with cleaner water from nearby streams. All over the United States, Americans will take advantage of the simple but priceless natural resource of America's water. And thanks to the actions taken by the Obama administration last week, we can rest assured that these vital resources are being protected by the full strength of the Clean Water Act. Last week, the Obama administration released a guidance document on the jurisdictional waters of the United States. The document was a sensible response to the confusion left in the wake of recent Supreme Court rulings. The draft guidance document that was released last week will help the Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the near term as they make decisions about whether projects will impact the waters of the United States and therefore require protective permits. Eventually, this draft document will be replaced by formal regulations that will ensure the Clean Water Act continues to protect America's waters. For nearly 40 years, the Clean Water Act has safeguarded almost all of our nation's waters. These safeguards protect our rivers, streams, and wetlands from the pollution in accordance with Congress's intent that the landmark statute, and I quote, restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. Nowhere in America is this more important about the enforcement of the Clean Water Act than the Chesapeake watershed. We understand that more than 100,000 rivers and streams come together to form North America's largest estuary, and they're all critical to the health of the Chesapeake Bay. These streams and rivers, along with their associated wetlands, serve as habitat for hundreds of species, buffers for slowing the flow of pollutants into the bay, and sponges that soak up and hold large amounts of floodwater and stormwater runoff. Despite major steps forward that have resulted in a majority of the nation's waters now being safe for fishing, swimming, and other uses, recent Supreme Court decisions have placed this progress at risk. The guidance developed by professional scientists and approved by the Obama administration provides strong protection for our nation's waters and restores the ability of federal agencies to enforce the Clean Water Act. I also want to underscore the fact that the guidance reflects the long-standing agricultural and other exemptions codified in the Clean Water Act. Madam President, this is a common-sense solution right in the mainstream of American values. The Supreme Court recent rulings put millions of acres of wetlands and thousands of miles of streams at risk. The court decision in its 2001 ruling in U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and its more recent ruling in 2006 on Rapinos threatened to roll back the Clean Water Act, making nearly 60 years of our nation's waters, making nearly 60% of our nation's waters vulnerable to polluters. The waters threatened by the narrowing of the Clean Water Act protections are important for fish and wildlife habitat, flood protection, and supplying drinking water. More than 117 million Americans receive drinking water supply, at least in part, by headwaters and similar streams. These vital streams and wetlands are also critical to the health of our most treasured water bodies, from the Chesapeake Bay to the Great Lakes to Lake Champlain to Puget Sound. Millions of small streams and wetlands provide the fresh water that flows into these regional economic engines. If we do not protect this incredible network of waters, we cannot hope to restore these water bodies to health. As Americans, we cherish clean water and the magnificent bounty we are blessed with. That is why last week's announcement was met with such strong support from a broad range of Americans, especially from our sportsmen. Among the groups supporting the administration's actions are Ducks Unlimited, the Isaac Walton League of America, the National Wildlife Foundation, the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, and Trout Unlimited. As chairman of the Water and Wildlife Subcommittee of the Environment and Public Works Committee, I am especially pleased that the administration has taken such a strong and sensible approach to protecting our nation's waters. Too often, we raise our voice in criticism of the actions of others. Today, I am proud to add my voice to the chorus of thanks to the Obama administration for a job well done. Thank you, Madam President. And with that, I would yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to make a few brief remarks about the fact that this week we're celebrating Charter School Week in America, and in the United States Senate, I'm pleased to join my colleague, Lamar Alexander, in co-sponsoring this amendment that I hope will be hotlined tonight. And that means passed unanimously without need to bring it to the floor for debate, because there are so many members of our Senate, both Democrats and Republicans, that recognize the value of high-quality charter schools and the difference that they're making in the advancement of education reform and extraordinary achievements being reached by students and teachers and communities because of them. I'd like to just have a brief statement on the floor and then share some interesting and really exciting statistics from my own experience in the city of New Orleans, which is the city that has the highest percentage of children in charter schools in America today. As a parent of two precious and delightful children, I know firsthand the value of a quality education to secure their future. Many American families are fortunate to live in places where public schools provide engaging and effective instruction and a culture of achievement that inspires students to aim high and thrive. Other families have the financial means to provide their children with a top-notch private school education. And, Madam President, you know, whether it's in Missouri or Louisiana or Texas or right here in D.C., that education can be quite expensive in our top private elementary and private elementary and secondary schools in our country. Sometimes tuition can reach to $25,000 a year and beyond, as hard as that might be for some to believe. That is true. And unfortunately, too many Americans are left without either option for their children, and their children are falling through the cracks. This cannot continue if America is going to maintain a leadership role and produce young adults who have the knowledge and skills to compete and win in this new worldwide marketplace. Fortunately, in a growing number of communities, including several in Louisiana and particularly in New Orleans, there is another option, an exciting option for parents and students, and those are high-quality public charter schools. This week, as I said, we celebrate the 12th annual National Charter School Week. It's a good time to take stock of how successful many charter schools have been and what we can do to replicate them across the country, and more importantly, what we can do to improve them, what we can do to eliminate poor charter schools and strengthen the great ones and make the good ones even better. Charter schools are public schools that receive public funding and serve the same neighborhood students as traditional public schools. Currently, it may surprise people to know that there are over 5,000 charter schools in our country serving more than 1.6 million children. These schools are required to meet the academic student achievement accountability requirements under all of our laws and in the same manner as traditional public schools. However, they differ from traditional public schools in several important ways. Charter schools operate free from many of the district rules and regulations, so they have more freedom to innovate, to experiment, to explore, to think outside of the box, to try some new approaches. Charter schools have autonomy in areas such as the length of the school day and year, as well as principal and teacher recruitment, selection, and development. With this freedom, however, comes greater accountability for improved student achievement. And unlike public schools in many places, charter schools that aren't successful can actually lose their charter, be forced to close, or be forced to transition to a new model. There are countless examples of high-performing charter schools that are producing impressive results as they continue to show that our students, including, and most importantly, that our low-income and minority students and disadvantaged students can and are rising to great academic heights. In my home state of Louisiana, there are 90 public charter schools, including 61 in the city of New Orleans, representing almost 72% of our city's student population, a higher proportion than any other school system in the United States. The city's Psi Academy is one remarkable example of a successful charter school, and I had the great pleasure to Skype with some of their students earlier this morning. Psi Academy opened in 2008 with 90 ninth graders, entering a rigorous and inspiring environment. More than half of the ninth graders who entered Psi Academy's inaugural class had failed state promotional performance tests, and more than 70% read well below the ninth grade level. Many of these students had missed a full year of school because of Hurricane Katrina and were significantly behind other students of their age. Incredibly, that same freshman class later scored 76% on our state's test, making it the third most successful high school in New Orleans. And the other high schools that beat it out actually had selective enrollment. And what's extraordinary about Psi Academy is its open enrollment, really focusing on the quality of teachers and the quality of teaching. It really is remarkable. And right here in the District of Columbia, and I'm proud to have had a hand in the development of this in the District of Columbia as a former chair of the subcommittee and a partner with Eleanor Holmes Norton and others that have worked so hard with the district on its reform efforts. Charter schools are an integral part of improving education outcomes in this city, our nation's capital. Starting with 2 small campuses in 1996, D.C. public charter schools now educate almost 40% of the school-aged children in the district, and they are serving the highest percentage of low-income and minority students in the city's most economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. D.C. public charter public schools outperform the city's traditional public schools from the 5th grade up, and they graduate 84% of their students, higher than both the city and the national average. Where quality charter schools exist, parents have real choices, exciting choices, and they are overwhelmingly choosing public charter schools. As many of these schools have long waiting lists. In fact, more than 50% of charter schools report having waiting lists, and the total number of students on these waiting lists, Madam President, is enough to fill more than 1,100 average charter-sized schools. Average-sized charter schools. It's quite a number on these waiting lists. Over the past 17 years, Congress has provided $1.6 billion in funding to promising charter school movements throughout the country through grants for planning, program design, initial implementation, replication, expansion, dissemination, evaluation, and for improving facilities. Our efforts at the national level are beginning to show real results. Maintaining and increasing, where possible, funding for charter schools is a winning proposition for parents, for students, for their teachers, for our community, and may I say, for our nation, for our workforce of the future, and for our economic security. Make no mistake, America will only go as far as our collective talent and ability will take her, and our future will continue to be shaped by how well we prepare today's students for tomorrow's challenges. Parents who are doing everything they can to give their children an opportunity for success deserve not only a quality choice, but a solution to the challenges of our education system. Successful charter schools provide that choice, and in many areas, they provide the solution. And now it's time to make them a central component of our education strategy all over the country. Senator Lamar Alexander and I are pleased to chair the Charter Caucus in the United States Senate, to join with President Obama and Secretary Arne Duncan in a focus on quality education for all children in America. President Obama and Secretary Duncan often say that charter schools are one tool, not the only tool, to get us from failing and mediocre public schools to great and exciting public schools in our country that are making a real difference. I want to just share some really extraordinary results that were given to me just this week as I hosted a roundtable with staffers and senators earlier this week about the accomplishments of charter schools. This comes from a wonderful group in New Orleans, New Schools for New Orleans, that is really one of the leaders in the charter school movement nationally. They are helping the city of New Orleans and many, many of our organizations in partnership with all sorts of funders and philanthropies, and the city of New Orleans, the mayor and the city council and others that are so supportive of what's going on. Our universities, I might say, the University of New Orleans, Tulane University, Dillard and Xavier have also been really on the forefront of this movement as well. Let me just share these results because they are quite extraordinary. This chart will show that in 2005, 62% of students in the city of New Orleans, not 15%, not 20, but 62%, were academically unacceptable. Based on standards set by our state and by the federal government in 2005, basically 62% of all the students in New Orleans were failing. They were not up to just basic education levels in reading and math. We had a terrible event happen, as many people will remember, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina and Rita, and the crashing of our levee system, the failing of our levee system, and 100 of our 146 public schools were virtually destroyed and remain unusable. Through the great efforts of local leaders, state leaders, and federal leaders, and with FEMA's help and some new out-of-the-box thinking, we were able to sort of pool the money that the federal government was going to reimburse each individual school and present one check to the city of New Orleans and the school board and the recovery district. And we've been building a new school system ever since, and charter schools are the foundation of that rebuilding. It is quite extraordinary that in only 5 years, when you look at the same population virtually, now there have been some families that have not yet come back, but they're on their way. There have been some families that left and aren't coming back, but it is a population still of a great number of minority students and disadvantaged and lower middle class students, as well as middle class and some wealthy students in our public school system. We have moved from 62% unacceptable to only 17% unacceptable in 5 years. I don't know of any other group of schools anywhere in the country that have made such remarkable gains. So when people question about do charter schools work, let me say the evidence is in. Quality charter schools work, and in every place where they exist, they outperform even their suburban counterparts, and in large measure, suburban counterpart public schools that are among some of the best. Many of these charter schools are in rural areas where there aren't a lot of opportunity for white, black, Hispanic, or Asian kids. Some of them are inner cities that don't have the same opportunities. We, again, have taken 62% of our population that was underperforming, and now only 17%. Here, it says the New Orleans students' test scores demonstrate the first significant improvement in the city's history, a 30% increase on this chart right here. And finally, closing the gap, the achievement gap between New Orleans schools and state schools by more than 50%. And here, the Thomas Fordham Institute study ranked 30 major cities on 6 critical reform categories. New Orleans, I'm proud to say, ranked first reform-friendly city in the country, followed by Washington, D.C., New York, Denver, and Jacksonville. But the great news is, Madam President, that there are cities and counties and states waking up to the exciting opportunities of education reform. We know that in America today, it should be unacceptable in some of our communities where 50, 60, 70% of our children are failing to get out of high school. We should be ashamed that even when some of our children walk across that stage and get that diploma that signifies that they have graduated, they are leaving truly, in many places, without the skills to get the job that will give them a living or saving wage, because our schools have been handing out diplomas that aren't worth the paper they are written on. That has got to come to an end. That is what we're fighting for. That is what charter schools help us to do. Now, is it possible for public schools that are not charters to achieve this success? Yes, and that is also happening. But I've found in my own experience trying to work with a system that was unwilling to make too much change, that charter schools provide the kind of competition and spark and challenge to an otherwise system that is run by a monopoly. This provides a diverse set of providers to education. It encourages new kinds of educators to come in and teachers. It gives the schools the freedom they need to make it work for the students that walk through that front door and want so desperately to walk across that stage with a diploma that means something and a future ahead of them. So I'm proud to help lead this effort here in the Senate. I really thank my colleagues for supporting for the 12th year a resolution commending high-quality charter schools in America. And let me just say in conclusion, we are not resting on our laurels. I've introduced a bill along with others. Senator Durbin and Senator Kirk have introduced a companion bill, if you will, and both bills are in an effort to take the bar even higher, to say to the country, let's get rid of our low-performing charter schools, let's focus on strengthening the authorizers of these charter schools. We do not want authorizers out there that are giving out charters to run schools to people that have no idea what they're doing. We don't want this movement to fail. We want this movement. We know it can be successful. We know it can be a real choice for parents. Think about it. Think about the value of a quality education. If you have to pay for it in the private sector, you're paying $25,000 to $30,000 a year in some of our communities. Maybe you're lucky enough to be in a Catholic school, an Episcopal school, where the tuition's subsidized, and you can get it in and out for $6,000 to $10,000 a year. But for many families with 4 children and 5 children, that's out of reach. They can't possibly afford that. And so having quality public schools is essential in every community in our country. I believe if we can do this in New Orleans, which is one of the poorest cities, not the poorest, but we struggle, as you know, in the city of New Orleans. We have a very broad demographic population. But if we can do it here, trust me, it can be done anywhere with, political will, and with the support of your state, your local, and of course, the federal government. So I'm pleased to have introduced, to help co-sponsor the All-Star Bill, which is a grant program for growth and replication of high-quality charter schools, and my own bill, the Charter School Quality Act. And I'm going to be working very closely with Senator Harkin, who has been open in many ways to these new ideas, and working with him as we authorize the Elementary and Secondary Act and be reminded of the great success that charter schools are having. And ultimately, we'd like to have 100% of the public schools in the city of New Orleans be charters, with some of the most exciting charter providers, some of the best in the world, operating our schools, challenging our kids, giving parents real choices, where they want to send their kids based on the personalities and the desires and dreams, personalities of the children and the desires and dreams of that family. And that's really what America is all about, competition and choice, opportunity, and we just aren't quite, Madam President, doing enough in this regard in our country today. But perhaps our charter school, the success of this movement, can show us a way forward. So I thank you, and I hope that we can get that resolution passed without further delay tonight. And again, I want to congratulate everyone that's worked so hard on making this National Charter School Week a success here in D.C., in our nation's capital, and around our country. And I yield the floor. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.